Hello everyone, my name is Christian. Welcome to my hobby blog. Today we are going to do my reaction to episode 2 of the Lord of the Rings Rings of Power TV show by Amazon. I don't feel as optimistic anymore. I had fun, I guess, with the latest one just to give initial impressions. I really enjoyed one plotline in particular. It was actually show stealing, in my opinion. Because of two of the characters I felt. And I felt like a lot of the rest of it was sort of just, I wouldn't say meandering, but they're not doing much setup, I feel like. I feel like a lot of it is just getting to know the characters, which is fine. I am fine with that, but these episodes, by the way, I didn't mention it in the last reaction, but each one so far has been about 60 minutes or so about an hour. So it's quite a bit longer than your typical 45 to 50 minute TV show episode, and usually that 50 minutes includes the credits, and so this one is quite slow. There aren't really any action set pieces in terms of what we saw in the first episode with the big battle with the kind of like, I don't know what they call them, but the ringwraith flying mounts. They attack eagles, and we have giant explosions and all sorts of stuff. And I feel like quite an idiot because I said that a dwarf fell from the sky, and that Nori, who is the Harfoot, she finds him, and I kept calling him a dwarf because he had a big beard, and that's just Lord of the Rings in general. Is if you have a big beard, you're probably a dwarf in the movie or in the books. And I saw him, and I just immediately was like, oh, that's probably one of the Durans. And he is not at all. He is totally different. We actually know nothing about him, which is a pretty fun mystery because I have theories, and it got confirmed by my good friend Ilana because I was texting her while I was watching the episode, and she didn't like it as much as the first episode. And I was, just giving her my reactions as I was watching the second episode. I was like, oh, I think the stranger guys are Maiar. And if you don't know what a Maiar is, they're basically the angels of Lord of the Rings and Middle Earth and this entire world. And I didn't think it was Gandalf or Saruman. I don't think there's any indication that it could be either or. But she confirmed that the showrunners said that he is one of the Maiar, and so now I'm kind of trying to think who exactly it could be. And at the end of the episode, he makes a constellation with some fireflies that get released from Nori and her friends' lanterns. And I have really no idea. She thinks it's Radagast, which I can see. I don't have any inclination one way or the other. Maybe because we have a short little scene at the beginning where he is being dragged along unconsciously on a wagon by Nori and her friend at night. And I didn't really think about it while it was happening, but with the idea that it could be Radagast, I wonder if that was a visual clue for us, because in the Hobbit movies, he is riding a little wagon carriage with his jackrabbit mounts who are pushing the cart along. And so I'm a little nervous just in general about the show now because the first episode was great. There was a few things that I was a little iffy on that I think this episode really expanded those feelings because Galadriel, I don't think, has a compelling, really, story right now. We ended the last episode with her in the middle of the ocean swimming after her ship is taken. and she ends up finding another boat, and she gets on, and she's hiding her elf identity by covering her ears with her hair. And they find out, and they're not happy about it, and they push her off. And they're like, oh my gosh, there's a worm coming, and it's a giant monster in the ocean. And it comes up and it bites the boat and eats everybody. And Galadriel just has to swim some more. And then one of the guys, whose name is Halbrand, he is one of the final survivors and was the original person on the ship saying, we don't like elves, get off our ship, I don't trust you. And they kick her off, and he rescues her after the big fish attack. And they pass out, and then the final shot of the episode is them getting picked up by a elvish boat, which I assume is Elrond, but I have no idea right now who it could be. The elf was in a silhouette, so hopefully next week, when the next episode comes out, we get confirmation. I don't feel like an idiot thinking it's someone totally different. But the definite highlight of this episode, and I'll probably talk about this the most because it is the most interesting part, is that after the Galadriel gets on the ship, we cut to Eregion, which is the high elf capital. So there's the woodland elves, and now we have the high elves, which is where Elrond and Celebrimbor, who I did not realize that was him while watching episode 1. I thought he was just an old advisor elf guy that Elrond was going to be butting heads with during the entire show. But it's Celebrimbor, who is one of, if not the best, blacksmith in Middle-earth. Or I guess in the entire world of the universe. But he is giving exposition about Feanor, who is the guy who defeated Morgoth with a pretty legendary hammer, which he also built the Silmarils with. And if you don't really know what the Silmarils are, there's some sort of heavenly stones that nobody can physically touch, I believe, or they go crazy. And I think Feanor is the only one who is able to withstand the Silmaril, is what I recall. That's what the entire Silmarillion is about. And I really enjoyed the scene with Celebrimbor. I like that they are putting him right out front in the beginning, and he's talking about plans that he has to build a great forge, and how Elrond is going to be the one in charge of it. And Elrond asks, whether the Khazad-dûm dwarves have been asked to help. And Celebrimbor is like, well, no. And Elrond's like, okay, I can go and ask them. So they both go to Khazad-dûm, which has a, I guess, attempt at humor scene where the dwarf at the oh my gosh, the Starlight Door, they have many of them in the Dwarven Kingdoms, and we see one in Lord of the Rings where the secret password is Melon, and there's a pretty humorous scene, I guess, where Elrond is talking with the dwarf at the gate, and he's like, hey, I'm gonna invoke this rite of passage, and he uses an Elvish word, which I don't know. And the door opens, and they let him in, and we get this really awesome shot. I think it might be my favorite shot of the episode, where we see the entirety of Khazad-dûm in its peak, as we know from Gimli monologues and expositions, is that Khazad-dûm was fucking awesome during this time of the Second Age. And I think Gandalf talks about it too. And we get, about a minute long or so of them going throughout. We see them mining. We see them with these giant mirrors reflecting sunlight. And we see the bridge of Khazad-dûm, which, if you don't remember, that's where Gandalf fell off of when the Balrog whipped him and the ankle and tied it around and brought him down the chasm. And that's when he's reborn as Gandalf the White after defeating the Balrog. But I loved everything with the dwarves, in my opinion. Everything with them was interesting. It was different. It didn't, I don't want to say tropey. I don't want to describe the plots that way, but it really feels tropey. Everything with Galadriel, everything with Nori, although I just like Nori the character a lot, and the stranger. I like them both. I like the somewhat humorous interactions where she's teaching him, how to eat the slugs, and showing him the lanterns that the fireflies are within, that he eventually creates the constellations with. But the Dwarven or the Dwarvish plotline just feels a lot more interesting and unique, because Durin shows up and he's like, hey, like, you can't just invoke this right, like, you have to go do a competition with me, and whoever wins can name the terms or whatever. And my term, because I know I'm gonna win, is that you have to leave the mountain. And Elrond is like, okay. So they smack some giant boulders with a hammer, and they keep splitting them in half, which I think is another sort of foreshadowing to Durin, Elrond, and Celebrimbor eventually doing the Rings of Power. And after that, they go on the elevator because, of course, Durin wins. And they're going up the elevator to the top of the castle or to Durin's home. And he's like, oh my gosh, like, Elrond, you fucker, you didn't come to my wedding, you didn't come to the birth of my 2 children, this, that, and the other. And Elrond is just sort of like, hey, congratulations, like, there's no hard feelings, between us. Like, I'm trying to work with you, and I'm not trying to take anything from you. I want there to be a 1-to-1 exchange for the proposal that I have. And so Durin invites him to his home and is like, okay, like, my wife, like, you are not allowed to stay here long. You are not allowed to stay for dinner, and this, that, and the other. And oh my god. Durin's wife, Disa, that is her name. She is on a lot of the promotional material. A lot of people were mad because, again, she is played by a black actress. And I saw a lot of people actually not complain about that aspect, but more the aspect that she did not have a beard, because Gimli talks about how it's really hard to tell the men from the women because everyone has beards. But I think that's a movie thing. I haven't read The Lord of the Rings in a long time, but but there's no mention of women dwarves in The Hobbit, so I don't know how Tolkien kind of approached that. But she is fucking awesome in this show. She definitely stole the scene, because she walks in, she's like, oh my gosh, this is Elrond, I've heard so much about you. And she is just so comely and homely and just so nice to Elrond, and she's just sort of countering everything Durin says, because Durin feels betrayed by Elrond, and she is just immediately warmed up to Elrond, and they have a back and forth at dinner, and Elrond is like, hey, like, I see that you planted the seed of the great tree, or whatever they call it, oh my gosh, I don't know, but it's one of the trees that Morgoth destroyed after gaining power with the Silmarils, I believe. And she talks, so lovingly of Durin, and, she has a lot of spunk, and she's not afraid at all of, sort of going against what her husband is saying, because he's being very sort of put offy with Elrond. That's what his entire scene is that he doesn't want to work with an elf, and that he feels betrayed by Elrond neglecting him for decades. or for 20 years, yeah, 20 years that Erewhon hasn't even talked to him. And so they kind of go back and forth, and I love the dialogue in this scene. It feels a lot more natural than Nori speaking one-sidedly to the stranger, or to the elf and human woman pairing, which I wrote down the names. The woman's name Bronwyn, and the elf is Erondia. So I don't know if they are characters in the Silmarillion or in the Appendices, and I learned just now before filming this that they do not have the rights to the Silmarillion. And so a lot of the content that they are doing on the show is going to be from the Appendices of the Lord of the Rings. So I guess when I finish the Lord of the Rings, I'll be able to sort of go through that and actually have a headcanon of all these different characters that I mentioned. But everything Dorf related was awesome. I really enjoyed it. I loved the scenery of it. It was really nice to see a Dwarven city in its peak, because we got a very tiny look in the beginning of The Hobbit when we're having our sort of explanation scene that Thorin Oakenshield is giving, all about the invasion of Smaug, the dragon. And I really wanted more in The Hobbit when that happened. We got a very tiny scene of it, and then everything else is in ruins, and it's just like Moria aesthetically. And it was so nice to see Khazad-dûm in its peak without ruins and stairs laying sideways, and it was just really nice. I really enjoyed it. But I'm trying to think anything else with the Dwarven plotline. They open a chest at the end of that plot of the episode, and they Durin and his father, and they see, I think, one of the Silmarils, maybe the Arkenstone. I don't think it's the Arkenstone, because that makes absolutely no sense, actually. It has to be one of the Silmarils. And because from Lord of the Rings, I remember an episode all about Feanor, and one was thrown into the ocean, one of the Silmarils. Another one was kept by the dwarves, and I think they said that it got lost, and a lot of people have theories that one of the Silmarils ended up being the Arkenstone, which Lord of the Rings outlined pretty extensively why that cannot work. And then another Silmaril was not destroyed, but something happened. I don't recall the video details all that well, but there's not much else in the episode that I really liked. We get some more with Bronwyn and her son, who they finally find the location of the missing people in the city, and they get to the location and they find a lot of holes and tunnels beneath the ground. And so they go down the tunnels, and Erondia, the elf, is kind of crawling around in the holes with a torch, which a lot of marketing images had that of him holding the torch. And so that's another thing that I have now seen in the show, so less that I know going forward. But they find goblins. I don't think they're orcs, but they find goblins down in the tunnels, and a separate goblin is underneath the house of Bronwyn and her son, Theo. And Theo has been complaining about rats under the floor, and everyone's like, oh, ignore it, like you're just imagining it. Ends up, it's a fully decked out and full practical gear. And what I mean by that is that the orc is not, or the goblin is not CGI. It was so wonderful to see a practical goblin. And it was so awesome. It looked disgusting. It had an awesome skull helmet that looked a little bit like the bone guy in Pokemon. That's sort of how he looked. And he gets hung on the rope, and her son is like hanging on there, and the rope snaps, and she beheads it, and she shows the head to the little tavern, the little wine spring inn. It kind of looked like it. I don't think it's the same set, but it could be. And she's like, okay, we gotta leave. Like, there's goblins here. We gotta go. And so they start leaving, and Theo, her son, uncovers a blanket package thing under the table, which I think his mom had. I'm not sure where it came from. Maybe the goblin had it, but he opens it and it's a little dagger, and it's drawing in smoke and rebuilding itself, and you hear the high-pitched wailing that the Nazgul do. So a lot of people were giving theories on this. I know Nerd of the Rings posted on Instagram like a competition, like who can guess what this is, because he had confirmation. And I have a feeling that Theo is going to be one of the receivers of the human ring, and that he's going to become one of the Nazgul, if not the Witch King of Angmar. And I think that's a really interesting idea. I'm definitely more interested in Theo's storyline now, but I still really don't care for Erandia or Bronwyn. I thought the relationship was interesting, but Erandia didn't really do anything this episode, which was a complaint of mine. And Galadriel, too, didn't really do anything this episode except swim and run away, or swim away from the big monster. But not much else happens throughout the episode. It's quite light. The last review that I did was at 31 minutes, I think, was the exact timestamp. And I don't really have much else to say. I'll continue watching, of course, because it's Lord of the Rings, but I think this one was definitely worse than the first episode by quite a bit. And I feel bad for it because I know a lot of people put in a lot of work for this, but we'll have to see. I'm optimistic that they are still in that weird early first season episodes where they just have to try and hook in as many casual viewers as they can, because they know that all of the Lord of the Rings diehards like me and Nerd of the Rings and the entire fandom are going to watch it anyways, but for the everyday person, they have to reel in a lot of people. So I think that's why I'm having issues with episode 2, because they're continuing these sort of tropey storylines, at least with Galadriel and Nori. And with the way that Nori and the Stranger ends, the storyline of them going out to go see the constellations, I'm really interested to see where that goes. I don't know anything about Nori. I don't think that's a real character in this book series, but we'll see. I don't know. I don't have anything else to say. So I guess next week episode 3 comes out. I don't think they're doing 2 episodes a week anymore. Wheel of Time did something similar by doing the first 3 episodes and then doing 1 week per episode after that. So we'll see. I'm optimistic, as I was saying earlier, that maybe they will continue on and continue on without these sort of tropey storylines and plot beats, because by episode 3, I think they should have enough confidence that enough people are interested that they can now go deeper into what the appendices talk about. And of course, I haven't read them, so I don't know specifics, but I know there's a lot of content in there. And with the show being 5 seasons, I think they really need to not take the time, because there's thousands of years of history that I think the show is going to have to cover. So, fingers crossed. Yeah, that's really all I can say. Thank you all so much for watching, and please leave a comment what you thought about this episode, and how you're feeling in general about the show. As you can tell, I think my hype died down a bit this episode, but it's just nice to see Middle Earth again. I mean, I think that's all I can really say. Everyone, please have a great rest of the weekend, and if you haven't already, please subscribe, like the video, and comment again. See ya.